Ernest Ephraim and Scofray, who are here to help us analyze the news. And we have some interesting stories to talk about. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm going to do something different this morning. I'm going to start with the Daily Guide because it has to do with the media. Now, although he didn't say TV presenters, but you are too lazy. Mahama blasts radio presenters. Also, boy killer grabbed with bloody cutlass. This is the case of the 13-year-old boy who was murdered. And another killer or another suspect has been grabbed in connection with that murder. And Ghana whips Sudan 4-0. That's the front page of today's Daily Guide. And although we're not radio presenters, we are part of the media family.
Yep.
And President Mahama says it is a lazy format when you just bring people on, politicians especially, to pitch them against each other to cause chaos in studio. He says it's a lazy format. Now, of course, we're not doing that here this morning. Our format is not lazy. But what do you make of this? He actually is addressing the way the media treats the news and encourages the media, particularly radio presenters, to seek out experts in the field to come and discuss topics properly and stop this so-called lazy format. You think it's a good move by the president, or you think he should leave well enough alone?
Oh, I wouldn't. I don't think he should leave. I mean, it's a good move because he's actually voicing the sentiment. I mean, a sentiment that's being voiced by many Ghanaians all over. That I mean, right now, practically when you scan the radio stations in the morning, it's the same thing all over again. One party against the other. If you tell them this flower is red, the opposing party will say no, it's not red. If you say it's white, this one will say it's not white. And at the end of the day, you listen to some of these shows for 2 hours, 3 hours, and ask yourself, what did we achieve?
But people listen.
Because
every morning people tune in.
That's what they're being fed with.
You know, that is the political system that we've created. The president is genuinely complaining, and I agree with him 100%. But I also disagree because he's a politician, and it's the same tool they use or they've been using to propagate their stories or their purposes. The ill that I see him pinpoint is when the media systems intentionally set up the politicians to create a package that amazingly we tend to buy. We, the listener, tend to buy. Now, if you want to sell your radio station, which he was critical about, is to put politicians together. And like my brother said, it takes away the substance that we can learn from. Because you'll find an MP who jumps from radio A, B, C, D, E. Monday he's on here, Tuesday he goes there. And he might not be an expert in, take it, energy. That is all right? He's not an expert on energy. But you find him comment on energy and skewed it to their political agenda. And before we realize their followers also pick it up. And when you dig deep per the consent of an expert, you realize that they fall short and fall foul of the reality of the issues. So the president's call, indeed, taking away political aspect of it is a good call, and we must listen to him. It's about time that we allow experts. They should pay the expert to appear on their shows. They should because it is intellectual property. I wouldn't come and sit there and pour out what I've studied in school or research on just to market your station. Look at Oprah's show. It's because of the person that she presents on the show, and they just don't appear. If Oprah endorses your book, it sells. Why? Because it's the people. So
for example, there's an issue or there's an item, and I have read about it and I've spoken to a few people about it. Much as I'm not an expert in oil, I could come on air and speak to that particular matter. Would it be far from right?
The part that I'm concerned, I'm agreeing with the president, is where a politician will be called to relate to subject matter. The undertone is not the substantive matter, but to make it politicized so that it creates sensation.
You know, the funny thing is, like when the budget is read, and then they'll call a former, like say under NDC, then they'll call a former MPP, Minister of Finance, to talk about the budget. Isn't it pretty obvious?
What is going to happen?
It's just going to denigrate whatever has been said.
But to add to that, we should also realize that even the politicians, that's where, I mean, there's a bit of tongue-in-cheek in what the president said, because the parties themselves have a whole machinery behind the media.
Right.
They have a communication team, I mean, well-funded communication team with a whole army of serial callers that are being paid by. You see, so when I heard the news on Friday evening about what the president said, I was like, okay, I mean, first you will want to disarm your army of serial callers, the communication team, because especially for government, when you have a ministry of information, a whole ministry to articulate the policies of government, why then do you need a party's communication team still articulating not the party's position, but the government's position?
You understand?
And then another army of serial callers who call in. And you know the interesting thing is you could be talking about flowers.
I get fed up with him.
And a serial caller will call in
because
because he's been asked to talk about chicken today. So he will call in and say, I want to congratulate Honorable so-and-so for the chicken yesterday. That is what is wrong.
I mean, I get fed up with the serial callers because, trust you me, what do they know? Even the point is that the problem has got to do with those sitting in the studio as so-called social commentators. They even have a problem because they're not fully seized of the matter that is to be discussed. Let alone the person who is calling, just a pedestrian on the street.
But like my brother said, it's a system. Okay, it's a system that the politicians have set in place. Let's use the government for instance. Okay, there is a Ministry of Information, and every ministry has a PRO unit, but yet you will find personalities speaking to issues of ministries as if they are ministers, as if they are the PROs of these ministries, and it takes away the official responsibility of the ministries. So if I want to pick a minister on, I cannot pick a minister on based on what somebody said belonging to his government.
Can we flip the coin, Kokwi? Let's flip the coin and find out, what about us, the moderators, the presenters? What about us? Because for example,
that's who he said. He said we are the lazy. Well, no, we. They are the lazy ones. That's what.
If I'm interviewing you,
presenters,
any personality on any particular issue, I should also have knowledge of the fact. So if the person strays, I bring the person back on. But whereupon I sit and allow somebody just to be propagating and just going on profusely with so many issues,
that actually speaks to the lazy aspect of the concept.
Good.
Because I've listened to radio stations where, in fact, there was one particular one where one of these Akan stations was interviewing the Minister of Agric on genetically modified foods. And you could tell the host had no idea about what he was. So this, and the funny thing is, the person he was interviewing also did not know much about what they were talking about. So he gave half-truths. And the person just, when he finished, he said, oh, thank you very much for enlightening us. Now, the sad thing is, the listener at home has now taken this half-truth as fact, as gospel.
Okay,
you see, let me chip in this. Let's not pretend from the fact that most of the hosts belong to the communication instrument of the political parties.
Or there's a lean.
Or if they're able to make you act as they want, you belong to them. So they ask the question to get a particular kind of response and result. So it's about time, like you're saying, if we all choose to be part of the development whole of the nation, let us take a stand to be part and not be partisan.
Because for us, you don't come and sit on this couch and then just go scot-free with any matter. No, you need to prove it. You need to prove it.
But you'll be shocked that sometimes people actually want to watch that kind of thing. You know? I've had that before. You know, with the radio station where I also work. And there was a woman who called. We were talking about something very educational, and she actually said, "Why aren't you doing politics? We want to hear the politicians fighting." And I thought, well, if that's what you see, look at the Scofray's face. You might be surprised.
That's what I'm saying. That the system, the media system, and the politicians have been able to skew it so that we are buying into it. If you keep on hampering lies, it tends to be truth in the masses' mind, like you said. So if they keep on channeling out this, when did this system started? Before
the point is that they're just making you partisan so that they can enhance their own thing.
Because which is where the serial callers come in. Because after all is being said, the serial callers call in to reinforce
the story.
That is
exactly.
From a lay perspective.
The Times has
the Ghanaian Times, teachers strike, timing wrong, Speaker Do Ajaho says. And he's saying this to teachers. Now, he spoke at the speech and prize giving day of the Accra Academy on Saturday, Accra, and he says their timing is wrong. Well, we could probably all agree to that fact. as the students are writing exams. Interestingly enough, I met a teacher over the weekend, and she actually said she doesn't even know why they're on strike.
Yeah.
She said it's really not most of them who feel
Aggrieved about what they're going on strike.
No, and she said the money they're talking about is
It's-
a bit negligible to some. For some people it's very important, but in her opinion, it just wasn't something that she was in support of or she even
realize,
understood.
I said this thing the last time that it's not that the salaries have not been paid, but it's just the
extras.
add-ons.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the extras.
You know,
And apparently
the
they're
add-ons,
not
they are
money-
right
And
in
even
demanding
and
what
the
is due them.
add-ons do not go to all of them as well.
Yes.
It goes there. If you look at the vehicle allowance,
yeah, exactly.
it's
How many
only
of
for
your
people
team
who have vehicles and who use the vehicles for official
purpose.
use.
Yes.
That's the thing.
And I believe that this story also captured the facet of our educational challenges, because if you read down, he spoke about we must disassociate or diffuse partisan politics from educational system.
The
We
3
must
and
have
4 year
we must
thing
have
and-
something in the constitutional amendment that says that okay, we are all agreeing to 3 years or
Yeah.
4 years,
Yes.
then we will give it the requisite developmental resource that it needs to implement it, so that nobody comes in after 8 years or 4 years
To come and say, I'm changing it to 3 years, changing it to 4 years.
This exams coming out, we have 4th year and 3rd year writing
Yeah.
together.
Yes.
And we have few universities to accommodate them. This is what stares us in the face, and yet they sit on radio station and applaud and clap and say, "Let's go," and say, "Oh."
Doesn't this feed into the same fact that because of political entrenchment, I mean, NPP obviously should be happy about what is going on because it's going against NDC. And the same thing, the time NDC was also in opposition and was happening to NPP, they were all happy. What is our problem?
No, our problem is only due to the fact that we do not have a national development plan.
That's true.
That's
true.
Serious. I mean, what we're doing now is akin to building a house without a plan. So when I have this contractor this year, he starts building it like it's a 4-story building. Then next year I change the contractor, I get a new contractor, and he starts building it like it's a one level
But are the
building.
teachers right in making their demands, regardless of the fact that it is time specific or it is not? Are the teachers right? For example, do you know how much the MPs are taking for their loan, the housing allowance or housing loan?
50,000 Ghana
50,000. Do you know how much it comes up to? 13,750 Ghana cedis. That is what they are taking. But yes, it was just packed quickly. They wanted it and it was just passed and they got it. Any allowance that they want, housing allowance, garden boy allowance, every living room allowance, sleeping allowance, waking up, clothing, soup, and all those allowances, they've been taken care of. So what about the teacher?
You see, and that is where the teachers come in place. If you look at the substance of why they are on strike, it's nothing. But if you think of the principle,
Yeah.
Principle, that's it.
that you've promised someone something very minimal, you fail to deliver on it for 2 years.
Yeah.
But in that same period, in fact, over a 6-month period, not only did you increase your pay by 105%, the MPs from
Yeah.
3,000
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
7,200, and then you paid yourself from 2009. That alone, just the back pay alone, cost this nation 246 million Ghana cedis.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Then we go on, and this affects ministers, etc.
Yeah.
Then we go forward. You give yourself 50,000
allowance.
allowance. Now, you see, the problem with that 50,000 is not the fact that you're giving the housing allowance, but the fact that you're paying 4 years. You have set a law, under rent control.
Yeah, for 6 months.
For 6 months.
But do you have to, I didn't hear the rent is for
Yes.
2 years.
It's for 4 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
If it's 4 years, then that's
For the
okay.
whole duration of the
Yes,
term.
but
Are you
but-
sure?
but-
Here it's not 2 years. After 2 years, you'll pay them
But
again.
even 2 years, it's still
still
hypocrisy.
But I'm looking
That
at
is why we don't
doubling.
have priorities. Okay, we set up, let's take it as a Sakumono village for MPs and stuff. They stay in there for 8 years, and now they are giving it out to them to buy it. If it is a system designed to cater, like the village for MPs, why should we sell it to them?
Yeah.
Because we will never stop appointing MPs.
That's it.
If they want a place, like other institutions are doing, they secure lands and sell it among themselves over a period of time in certain places. So why should we hand over such facilities and sell it back to them?
You see, it should
we
be there
don't
for
have
MPs.
priorities.
And
And like you
see,
said, we don't have a development plan. So anything haphazard goes, anything ad hoc goes.
All right, before we're running out of time, look at the insight. This headline: Church and business. What happened to the idea of storing up treasures in heaven? Now, according to the article by Epo Mensah, the advice to Christians to save up their treasures in heaven has become outdated. Church leaders and families and friends are struggling in the world of business to accumulate as much surplus value as they can on earth. And it goes on to talk a bit more about this. There's Madam Rosa Whittaker herself on the cover there.
And Professor himself, yeah.
Yes, Professor
The
Chinua
next
Achebe
professor,
has passed away,
Yeah.
legendary Nigerian author. May he rest in
Things
peace. That's
fall
the cover
apart.
of The Insight. It's an interesting headline, interesting take on the news from The
Yeah, this is
Insight.
very contentious.
It is very contentious, but it's a discussion worth having, especially since we're in a community where so many people are suffering, are
Yeah.
struggling, and you see people who are pastors and who preach the word,
Yeah.
and they are living lavish lifestyles. And the word does, according to it, does say that you should store your treasures in heaven. There's even a story in the Bible where Jesus asked a rich man to give up all his belongings to follow him, and the man said, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what is this about church and business and wealth building in the church? You know, is there a conflict there? How,
I don't think
for
there's.
you-
I don't think there's.
It's not necessarily conflict, but principle is principle.
Yeah.
Okay. A research said that if about 21 top-notch pastors chooses to let go of their assets, Africa will be transformed. 21. You come to our part of Africa where we say poverty is endemic. You find a pastor who owns a private jet, not one, not two, a fleet of cars, mansions, and everywhere. That go to that same pastor's church. Somebody is struggling to pay school fees. Somebody is struggling to wear 3 clothes. Somebody is struggling to wear a pair of shoes. Does the principle of the Bible really relate? If you read the book of Acts, they sold their assets to share it among
Yes.
themselves according to their needs. So how come that the needs in the church is disparate? Some are way higher, some are way low. So on that principle, I agree with the Insight. I'm not saying pastors shouldn't go into businesses, but don't use the church to start businesses. Don't use the church to promote certain businesses. In some part of in Africa, some pastors and churches own banks.
Of course.
Do you understand?
Why shouldn't the pastor own?
I'm
a
not
bank?
saying,
Why
but if you
shouldn't a
go
church
deep down, you
own
realize
a
that
bank?
it is the church that sets up the business, and the church is an NGO. So let us use the principles, not whether be right or wrong, but if based on principle. I'm not against you maybe working and having your whatever, but when it is the church foundation you use to accumulate that, come on, let's be
But the
honest.
point is
and
that if
realistic.
a church sets up a bank, most definitely it needs to pay taxes out of that one. Most definitely, you very well know that because there are rules and regulations here.
But then, what the problem you have now is if you look at years before, the Catholic Church, the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church, they contributed to our society.
and still do.
Yes.
Most of us were
Yes.
educated in
Yes.
in
I
schools
know
from
churches
them.
believe.
The new churches of today also contribute to society.
The new
But the
churches,
church
no,
try
the
to
new
cross-check the
churches
school
are different
fees of
in the sense.
most of the
It's
If
that
you
is
look
where we
at
all
schools-
get it wrong, I think. Because what is it about school fees? I've established a school and I'm charging my fees.
No,
is it because I'm a church? I should just go down and make my fees for you?
batteries.
I do not have a problem with that. You can charge your fees.
Yeah.
But then you also recognize the fact that, but for the contribution of ordinary folk, it's the same reason why government subsidizes certain facilities
Yes, for the
because
ordinary,
poor,
exactly.
because he realizes that the ordinary person is the KIU is contributing something, and at the end of the day, look, let me ease some of the burden on that KIU.
Right.
In the same way, it's sad to think that we are now pleading with churches to recognize the needs of the poor.
Do churches not recognize the needs of the poor?
It is
No,
not-
it is not when
you
you
see,
see
it's in your confinement, not in
recognition of the
development.
needs of the poor is not when you're donating clothes
No.
or giving them food.
Once in a
Teach
while.
me to fish. Don't.
What
feed
is the
me.
role of the church in your life? What is the role of the teacher in your
That
life?
is
What is the
easy.
role of your parents in your life?
Let's
Where
go to,
is the failure
let's go
line?
to the establishment of the church when the deacons were appointed. The first deacons, when they were appointed, the reason why they appointed deacons in the church was because the apostles were overwhelmed with the needs of the widows, etc., etc. So to set up a new administrative system to deal with this issue so that the apostles could focus on the word of God, they established the deacons. And the deacons, their sole responsibility was to provide for the widows, the poor, the homeless, the needy,
And
etc.
how were they supposed to do that?
Through the funds that were coming in. Through the
So
church.
regardless of what funds are going to come in, let's all not forget that, look, times have changed, okay? things have evolved. So most definitely, you don't get just a pastor sitting in the church waiting for you to come and give, what's the name, your offertory.
But you see what the interesting thing is about that argument?
But
Those are the same people who will say the Bible doesn't change. Times, you can't say times have changed, so things shouldn't change.
Another research proves
You know,
that
most of the time, these pastors are
business,
motivational speakers.
the
You know, pastors
fastest
are
growing
motivational
business
speakers.
in Africa
Motivated by
is
God.
church.
Which God gave freely.
Look, if you think pastoring a church is very simple and
I'm not
easy,
saying
just
it's
go
saying
set
that.
up
No
a
one is
church.
saying it's
I'm not saying
simple.
no one is saying it's
How
simple to
come-
pastor a church.
how come
I think
setting
it's
up
the way
church-
funds are used.
It's
You are
crazy.
not
Which funds are not used properly?
no,
Tell me.
You see, as a
Point out
pastor,
one to me.
as a pastor, you're a motivational speaker, yes. And because of your position as a pastor,
Good.
you're not taxed.
Yes, fine.
So think about it. That if I go into motivational speaking right now, I will be taxed.
Yes,
definitely.
because
Yeah.
it's not a pastor.
What makes you any different from me?
Yes.
Okay, we'll continue this one.